Hello, hello. Welcome, please come in. It's time to resume our no magic runs through an assortment of Final Fantasies, continuing with Final Fantasy VI. And I'm very excited to see how this game holds up when you can't use magic. The magic-only run I did of this game a few months back had an interesting difficulty curve. So I'm very curious to see how not using magic progresses, and to see how the different characters' unique abilities compare in viability. But no time to stall, it's time to hop into the run. This first section is very easy, as the Magitek abilities you gain access to in this early section are just stronger than magic anyway. I do input too many commands at once and lose Terra to Ymir's counterattack, but that's fine. Biggs and Wedge can handle this fight by themselves. And then they get noped out of existence and Terra wakes up in this dude's house. Terra's big unique thing, at least early on, is the ability to use magic, which means all she can really do at this point is just use basic attacks. Good thing she quickly falls and passes out. Now it's time to rescue her with some Moogles and Locke. Mog can unlock his first dance ability, that I won't see again for many hours, and he has a convenient mithril spear for me to steal. Locke can otherwise handle the main fight, and I escape the caves of Narsh. Time to head to Castle Figaro to recruit Edgar and buy some tools for him to use in combat. These are going to be quite useful, at least for the first half of the game. Kefka shows up to be a jerk, and it's time to bail. Over to Figaro Cave, which is uneventful, and into South Figaro. Here, I can pick up some useful accessories and buy some new armor and weapons. Mount Colts is next, and the next boss fight. This guy, and his bears. And wow, I am getting destroyed. This is partly because I'm underleveled, partly because my healing is bad. I don't like that potions only heal 50 HP. And even high potions, which I can't actually purchase yet, only heal 250? I suspect healing is going to very quickly become a problem. Good to see they learned nothing about item balance after FF5. Alright, couple levels gained, let's try this again. Levels are pretty impactful in this game, and a couple levels are enough to give me the HP I need to push through, which means Sabin shows up. I can absolutely just use his blitzes to finish off the fight, and then Sabin joins the party, which is very good, because his blitz command is going to be the cornerstone of my offense for basically the entire game. With Sabin on the team, I can now reach the Returner's hideout. Nothing super notable here, though I can buy high potions, which is concerningly early for an item upgrade. I'm going to be stuck with these the whole game, huh? And of course, by telling Banon no 3 times, I can get the Genji Glove accessory to let me dual wield. Then into the river section, which it turns out is much easier when you can use all your characters. Ultros boss fight time. Ultros is weak to fire, but sadly that does not help me. Good news is that Aura Cannon deals more damage than fire would. Banon can help with healing via prey, but Ultros actually does deal pretty high damage, especially compared to potions. Good thing my damage is much better. Which means the party is split, and it's time to complete 3 separate stories. First is Locke, and by stealing a bunch of random outfits, I can unlock the path to free Celeste. There are some nice treasures on the way out, most notably a ribbon to prevent all status effects. Weird that you can get a ribbon so early in this game. And back into South Figaro Cave and to fight the tunnel armor, which is way easier when I can actually use Runic to stop it from destroying my party with spells. Except its other attacks are enough to actually take me out, and Celeste isn't quite fast enough to stop all the magic. Let me hop back in, but this time have Celeste equip the Hermes sandals for auto haste. This means she actually can stop all the spellcasting, and Locke can take out the armor's HP by himself pretty easily. I thought Celeste would be useless since I can't use magic with her, but Runic might actually be useful enough to make her a viable party member. Over to Sabin to immediately recruit Shadow and buy some shurikens to help with damage, and the Imperial camp has some neat treasures, and the satellite enemy, which always manages to be a bit obnoxious. Then Kefka does a bit of a war crime, and Kayan is very upset about it. Kayan joins the party, and I make my escape via Magitek armor. Then into the Haunted Woods, and on to the Haunted Train, and it's time for train shenanigans. And the train itself doesn't really have anything worth talking about, and reaching the end means fighting the train itself. Time for a brief break to suplex the train, then use up Phoenix down to end the fight. Shadow bails, and the rest of the team jumps down a waterfall. I can understand why Shadow bailed before we did that. This gets me to the town of Moblez, where I can buy some weapons and armor, and the dried meat I need to recruit Gao, who can then learn some rages. I won't actually be using Gao or Kayan long term, but a few rages will get me through the next few areas. That done, I can grab the diving helmet from this cave and into the river for a long river ride with a bunch of monster fights. Gao does die at one point because I'm just spamming attacks, but there isn't really anything else interesting that happens, and I press on. Back to my other team to continue my long ride down a river, and then reconvene in Narsh. Imperial forces are on the way, and it's going to take the entire team to stop them. And by the entire team, I of course mean the 4 team members I bothered to put in the main party, which is going to consist of Locke, Edgar, Sabin, and Celeste. Edgar and Sabin can deal big damage with Blitz and tools respectively, Locke is pretty fast and can steal items, and Celeste's runic command should be very useful in the fight against Kefka. The fights leading up to Kefka aren't particularly challenging, but they do serve to drain my limited healing reserve of potions. I really hope future games have better healing items to use because having no magic healing is a real bummer. Anyway, time for the Kefka fight. Celeste does do a great job of weakening Kefka's offenses via runic, and the rest of the party can just beat him up quite effectively. Okay, yeah, that wasn't too bad. Limiting his spellcasting really does make this fight mostly free. Terra is an Esper and Bales, which means it's time to follow after her. And my party for that journey is going to be the exact same. And for the same reasons. But only after buying some new weapons and armor. Time to head over to Figaro Castle to use it as a transport. I do a bit of grinding at Kolingen just to top off my healing reserves, and south to Jadur to buy some new equipment. In retrospect, I probably should have just waited to buy stuff here. Anyway, to the sketchiest town ever. First, to pick up my next Edgar tool, the chainsaw. Then the brigand gloves for Locke to unlock the mug ability. And next boss fight is Dadaluma. Sabin and Edgar do a very good job of dealing big damage, despite Dadaluma deciding halfway through to use 4 healing items in a row. And while the boss does briefly summon help, Rising Phoenix hits all enemies, so this area is very easy. And I've reunited with Terra and gotten my first Magicite, which is very useful. While I can't actually use the magic command in this run, many types of Magicite give passive bonuses on leveling up, which I will absolutely be taking advantage of. When I remember to equip them, which is not as often as it should be. My next destination is the Empire, but to reach there, I first need to get an airship, which means it's time for a trip to the opera, where the teams convince the opera manager to let Celeste pretend to be a famous star. Come to think of it, do we ever actually see the real opera star? Where is she? The opera section is very lovely, but I've also seen it before, so we will skip ahead and get back into the gameplay. And thankfully, these stupid opera rats are actually very easy to kill in a reasonable amount of time when you aren't stuck just using magic. Seriously, why are the Blitz commands so unbalanced in this game? Then the boss fight against Ultros. I have basically no healing, which isn't ideal, but my character's damage is so high it doesn't even really matter. I win the fight by just spamming my best attacks. Not by a lot, mind you, but enough. And through trickery, I have recruited Setzer and acquired his airship, meaning it's time to explore the Empire. On the Empire continent, I head through the few towns to pick up what new equipment is useful, and it's time to sneak into Vector. And then sneak into the Magitech facility. This area has some shiny items lying around, particularly the elemental swords, which can help me target elemental weaknesses that I otherwise cannot. And then another boss fight, this time against Ifrit. Celeste is on runic duty to stop Ifrit from casting any offensive elemental spells, and the next problem is that Ifrit and Shiva appear to be completely immune to elemental damage, which is not great. Locke also goes down almost immediately, drastically hindering my damage. Fortunately, I do remember that I picked up the drill tool in Figaro Castle, and it is very useful here, especially with runic stopping my party from getting completely stomped by spells. And some more running, and it's already next boss time. 24 here is a lot less dangerous than Ifrit and Shiva, and drops very quickly to aura cannons and drill attacks. Again, pretty sure this boss is supposed to have mechanics, and I just basically never see them because he dies too fast. And it's time to escape the facility via minecart in an exciting chase, which largely goes fine because of Sabin's comically high damage, but every battle I enter chips away at my health a bit. And while I do have some high potions, I don't have a ton, and I would really like to be able to heal between fights here and simply cannot. And another boss fight, number 128, who immediately KOs Locke. Sabin is dealing big damage, but I am also getting absolutely walloped. I get Locke back up and functional, and then just spam potions with Edgar and Locke while Sabin unleashes Blitz to win the fight, which was a lot closer than I'd like. And then it's time for a crane fight. One downside of Blitz is that you can't dictate who a single target Blitz attacks in fights with more than one enemy. It's not that big of a hindrance considering how much damage blitzes deal, but it is something to think about. The crane fight was easy. Drill and aura cannon just deal way too much damage for any enemy in the game to stand up to them. Magitech facility dealt with, and it's back to Zozo to get Terra's fun backstory, which takes a lot of time to play out, but once that is done, I can once again choose my party and take control of the airship. The world is now mine to explore. I mean, I've been everywhere interesting that isn't next in the story, but hey, airship! Next destination is the Esper Cave, which means I need to bring Terra along. While she can't use magic, her physical stats aren't bad at all. Also, it helps that this area has no boss, so I definitely don't need to be optimal here. The cave does have the Ultima weapon, which deals damage based on how full the character's HP is, which can be quite strong. We have now unleashed a bunch of angry Espers on the world, and our airship gets damaged. And now it's time to return to the Empire to use diplomacy to get them to help us deal with the big Esper threat, which leads to a very tense dinner conversation. Completing this successfully unlocks all the chests in this room, which is just a whole bunch of shiny items and money. Always appreciate that. Time to take a boat to Thamasa, our next big destination in the ongoing Esper nonsense, and that introduces us to Strago. And he is going to be a big boon to this run, because the lore command is not the magic command. So Strago's lores are absolutely on the table, which is going to be very important for the rest of the game. And time to get that started by dealing with the Building on Fire dungeon. And I have another all-target attack in the form of Aqua Breath, which can absolutely devastate the bomb enemies here. And the next boss here is the Flame Eater. This boss summons bombs, which I can easily dispatch via Aqua Breath, though doing so does trigger a pretty harmful counterattack. And while the rest of my party can't deal elemental damage regularly, I do have an Ice Brand for Terra to hit pretty hard. Strago does go down at one point, which is not ideal, but a Phoenix down and a few high potions get him back up so he can resume spamming Aqua Breath. Huh, didn't know this boss could summon grenades. That's not great. They have way more HP and can self-destruct to one-shot a party member. Okay, victory! That was a little spicier than I was expecting, but still pretty good. Shadow pops in and rescues the party, and now we know Strago can do magic. Time for Esper Cave. And the first chest has a healing rod, so I can heal via physical attack. That could actually be quite useful, since I don't really have any other good healing options at this point. And it's into another Ultros fight. Ultros is weak to fire, which is nice because I now have fire swords to hit that weakness with both Locke and Terra. And while I can't use Aqua Breath as Ultros absorbs it, Strago can both heal and cure Confuse with Healing Rod. And Realm is here to help out and sketch... bye, I guess? I'm confused, Realm didn't even get a chance to use Sketch. Alright then, I guess we're just gonna move on. Esper's found and recruited to not blow things up. Back to Thamasa to get betrayed by Kefka. Nothing interesting happens in this scene, so it's time to move on. Airship is reclaimed, and my next big destination is the floating continent to confront Kefka again. But first, I have some errands to run, and getting Strago some lures is a big part of that. As good as Aqua Breath is, I need some more options for that skill set to really shine. First is Traveler, which deals damage based on the number of steps I've taken. I will never use this. Next up is this enemy whose name I can't pronounce, which can use White Wind, which at least partially solves my healing problem for the foreseeable future. And with that done, it's time to besiege the floating continent. And that starts with fighting just so many random encounters against these flying drones. Fortunately, unlike other similar segments, I do actually get a break between fights to use high potions and Phoenix downs. Every fight is also a side battle, which limits my ability to hit all enemies, but eventually I do get through that segment, and it's time for another Ultros fight. Ultros is still weak to fire, meaning Sabin's Blitz deals big damage, and Edgar dual-wielding Flame Swords deals even more damage. Then I can just spam attacks to take out Typhon. Typhon doesn't really have any good attacks, so Healing Rod healing is more than enough to keep me going. And then as I fall, I can use Sabin's Blitz to attack the various parts of this boss. While White Wind can't heal, it is a bit limited against multi-target attacks because it heals based on Strago's current HP. But this fight is still pretty easy. On the floating continent, Shadow joins the party. I have to be very careful because the enemies here are very dangerous in very different ways. I do unlock Chakra, which is actually a very nice all-ally heal, or almost all-ally healing, as it doesn't heal Sabin, but healing everyone else is pretty nice. Alright, time for the proper boss of this area, Ultima Weapon, which is usually one of the harder fights in the game. My damage via drill and throw is very good, and my healing is okay. Chakra and healing rods are nice, but oof, that's a lot of negative status effects. Okay then, let's give this another try. I haven't changed anything at all, but let's just hope it works this time. Not really sure what my plan was, and no, it actually does not go even slightly better. I still get afflicted with a huge number of statuses. I guess it's fewer statuses, so maybe I can... That's a meteor. I did forget about meteor. Let's just see if doubling down on offense works. I have Edgar spam drill, Sabin spam aura cannon, Shadow spam shurikens, and Strago spam white wind. And it turns out that I was just overthinking this fight. The actual solution was just to deal as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible. Which I guess makes a kind of sense. And then Kefka betrays the Emperor, gains ultimate power, and destroys a bunch of stuff. There are a few mandatory fights between me and the end of this area, but most are solved by just spamming attacks, which is always nice. Time to hang out with several minutes on the clock waiting for Shadow. Then things go great for everyone, and nothing wrong happens at all. Anyway, rejoin Celeste and feed some fish to Sid. He's better, but it doesn't actually help me in any way. But completing this section gets me a raft and over to the next continent to resume the actual story. And now that it's the world of ruin, it's time to reform the party. First stop is this crumbling building. That's not ideal. Celeste may be a bit under-leveled, actually. I hadn't considered that, as Celeste was, if anything, over-leveled in my magic-only playthrough. I think I need to do a bit of grinding before diving into this section, which takes longer than I'd like because of the aforementioned state of being under-leveled, and Celeste being alone. But a few levels gained, let's see if Celeste can survive just a bit better. And the answer is yes. Honestly, the biggest thing is just that she can one-shot the Nightwalkers here. But with that completed, Sabin rejoins the party. And it's time to head over to Nakia, where I can buy some better weapons and better armor. After some grinding for Gil. And then catch a ship headed to South Figaro. Through Figaro Cave and into the underground Castle Figaro, Edgar rejoins the party, and it's time to fight some tentacles to free the engine. And this fight isn't too difficult. Both Edgar and Sabin can target all enemies, and while the damage isn't great, it's also not bad. The tentacles are also only really dangerous if they can grapple multiple party members, and neither Sabin nor Celeste can be grappled because of auto haste. Back in Kolingen, I can rejoin Setzer, and then head over to Daryl's tomb to get the next airship. And in here, it becomes very apparent that I've reached the point where regular attacks are actually just dealing more damage in general than tools or blitz. At least against single targets. And it's boss time! I get lucky immediately because level Question Holy doesn't hit anyone in my party, so that's convenient. And then I quickly realize Runic is going to be a game changer here. Dullahan relies on a lot of powerful spells to deal damage, and Celeste can just negate all of them. I don't have Strago to heal, but Sabin can spam Chakra to do some decent healing throughout the fight for free. While Edgar's damage isn't as high, Drill does deal about 1400 damage, which isn't nothing. Runic can even block Northern Cross, Dullahan's most dangerous spell, which is great. Okay, yeah, not magic actually has spent most of this game being better than magic. Except for healing purposes, I guess. Sad backstory completely ignored, I have my airship back, which means I can go basically anywhere I want. And next stop is Jadur. Here I can breeze through the Haunted Mansion to face down the evil painting. The painting itself is weak to fire, which means Sabin and Edgar can deal huge damage every attack with fire element weapons. And while the painting can cast spells, Celeste has Runic, so that was easy. Beating the fight gets Realm back in the party, who isn't that exciting by herself because Sketch is useless in boss battles, and her high magic provides me no benefit. But recruiting her back means I can fly over to the Cultist Tower to get Strago back. And his lower abilities are absolutely valuable for this run. I want to continue padding out my ranks, so it's back to Narsh to pick up Mog. I won't be using him very much, but because learning magic isn't a factor in a character's viability, I will be getting most of the characters in this game. Next up, and it's time to fight Valagarmanda. This fight isn't too difficult. Celeste can block many spells with Runic when she isn't frozen, and Sabin and Edgar can deal big damage with Drill and Rising Phoenix. Meanwhile, Strago just hangs out, waiting to heal with White Wind where necessary. This opens up the Yeti Cave, which can be easily navigated, which leads to the Yeti boss fight. This boss is very weak to fire and doesn't negate physical attacks, which means Umaro is now on the team. That's a good chunk of characters, but I still have a good bit of recruitment left to do. Back to the Veldt and the cave thereof to recruit Shadow. But getting him back means a fight with the Behemoth King, which is weak to fire, which means my many fire-based weapons deal big damage. And while the fight then switches to another Behemoth King, it is also weak to fire. Alright, who is my next recruit? Phoenix Cave, which is a pretty fun puzzle dungeon that requires me to switch between two parties. But other than that, there isn't anything interesting here. I find no boss at the end, just Locke. And after some more sad backstory, he rejoins the party. And with that, it's back to, oh good lord, Deathgaze. Gonna run away because I am not equipped for this. Still more work to do to get ready for Kefka. Time to fly to this island and get swallowed by Zone Eater. This area is pretty uneventful. There's definitely some interesting puzzles, but nothing earth-shattering. At the end of the dungeon, I recruit the Mimic Gogo, who is going to be very useful to me. But let's head back to Narsh. Now that I have Locke, he can unlock the doors, and I can grab the Ragnarok Sword, a very strong weapon with very strong stat bonuses. This is going to do a lot to get my damage up to big numbers, and it's time for Realm to actually do something useful via the fake mustache item. This turns her sketch ability into control, which makes getting Strago's lures way easier. First up is Arrow, which I don't think I ever actually use. Then over to Deathgaze, do you mind? Then over to Daryl's Tomb to get Bad Breath, which I know I never end up using. Then I struggle for a while to learn Big Guard from the Landrays here, because for some reason they have 1 HP and start with Sap. It is only after some brief googling that I learned that you can just use a remedy to cure Sap. Probably should have thought of that, but now I have Big Guard. Oh yeah, I never recruited Terra. Guess I should do that now. She isn't the most useful party member without magic, but she can still do decent damage with her sword attacks. This means fighting Humbaba, who dies very quickly, then leaving town and fighting Humbaba again, but stronger this time. Fortunately, Terra starts the battle in auto trance. Sabin can then use Chakra to keep the party healed, while Edgar attacks with Ragnarok. Ragnarok deals almost 3k damage per hit by itself, and can sometimes trigger Flare, which deals very big damage. This fight is not particularly long. Let's hop into the Cultist Tower, which has a couple items I want. It does have the unfortunate downside of only allowing items and the magic command, and you can't run from encounters here. So traversing this area is a bit problematic, and gets me killed because Auto-Reflect can reflect most spells, but not Quake. And these cultists only cast healing spells. It is then that I remember Mog's Malulu charm negates random encounters, and the air anchor is useless anyway, so I shouldn't have bothered. The Soul of Thamasa is completely worthless in this run, and there is no way I'd beat the final boss of this area anyway, so it's time to move on. Next, it's over to Duncan's cabin. Here I can learn the ultimate blitz move, Phantom Rush. This will be very useful for my single target damage. Then back over to Thamasa to unlock a new dungeon, where I have to fetch coral pieces to feed to a treasure chest. Just go with it. Silliness aside, it's a fight against Hidon. Realm gets to spend her entire time using healing rod attacks to heal allies. Meanwhile, Edgar can spam drill to remove the adds from the equation. Oh, I do use arrow once. That's exciting. Anyway, that's what I'm actually here for. Great Delta is a very strong blue magic that hits all targets. That acquired, I can end the fight without too much difficulty. Don't worry, I still have more random errands. My next goal is the Celestriad, a stupidly strong accessory that reduces MP cost to 1, which will be very useful for Strago's lowers. There are a couple ways to get one, but the easiest is to load up Gogo with steel commands and the bandit's gloves, and wager the Murakumo in the Colosseum. You can then mug from this bird. It is the rare steel, but not that rare. Okay, errands are mostly done, but I do still need to do some prep work. The final dungeon has you split your party into 3 groups, and because I don't have to think about teaching everyone magic, I want to get everyone into those fights. Which means I need to do a bit of grinding to get everyone up to a reasonable endgame level. Which for my purposes means 40, which is about right for the endgame here, or so the internet tells me. Plus, by doing a lot of leveling all at once, I can really benefit from the stat bonuses Magicite gives when you level up with it equipped. When you remember to equip it. Cough. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I probably want a second Celestriad for Gogo. They can equip almost any of the secondary abilities of other characters, and while their stats are awful, even awful stats can make use out of lore abilities in this game, especially when Big Guard and White Wind don't care what your stats are. One more thing before I hop into Kefka's tower, I need to kill a bunch of Cactuar to get enough gil to buy consumables and throwable items, and actually full sets of equipment for the entire party. Each cactuar gives 10,000 gil, so it doesn't take very long. Alright, that should be everything I need. Time to end this. And time to spend 10 minutes getting everyone geared up, and it's into the first boss, Ultima Buster, who is just as chatty as his weapon brother. And then I just spam basic attacks. It's not a foolproof plan, but Umaro is apparently immune or absorbs all elements, and Edgar is hitting for 6,000 damage a hit. Let's give Gogo some actual abilities for the next fight though, because I really don't need them to have steal 3 times. Definitely lore, but I think runic may also be nice if that comes up. Time to explore a bit with my next party and fight my next boss, Inferno. And it starts off bad. With multi-target spells, gets worse when I attack Sabin and don't realize that Realm doesn't have the healing rod equipped, and then Meteor just devastates the party. Okay, so a boss that actually is a bit tricky. That's novel. Actually, this boss gave me difficulty in Magic only too. Although, if I recall correctly, that's because Realm was the only usable party member. Anyway, let's change setup a bit and try this nonsense again. Razor Gale hits pretty hard, but so does Inferno, and while Sabin can use Chakra, it doesn't heal himself, just everyone else. Realm's sketch ability is useless, though Celeste does have pretty good magic resistance. Dead again. Okay, weird. Let's see what else I can do. Let's give Sabin a Reflect Ring to bounce spells back. He's my only real healer in the fight, so he needs to keep his HP high. I'm also going to switch Ragnarok onto Celeste with Gauntlets for better damage. Yeah, that's better. And now I'm just going to heal constantly with Sabin while focus firing down the main boss part. It's still not a free fight with Realm getting petrified and Setzer dying, but Sabin having Reflect does help keep him alive long enough to heal the party, and Celeste deals just stupidly high damage with Ragnarok. Seriously, two-hand the Ragnarok in this game. You will not be disappointed. And into another fight with the same party. Why does this party fight more bosses than the other two? That's weird. This fight should be a lost cause, with my party getting devastated down to just Celeste in critical health, but Ragnarok's strength combined with 2 flare triggers actually wins the fight. Huh, that should have been harder. And another fight with this party, Demon, who thankfully is a single target rather than a multi-target boss, which means I can start spamming Phantom Rush and Ragnarok attacks. Realm and Setzer are still basically useless, but Sabin and Celeste are just too strong for this fight to last. Next up is Fiend, which is another fight. Good thing here is that my entire party is actually useful. Shadow can throw Fuma Shurikens, Strago has lures, even Mog is kitted out with Dragon Horn and Dragon Boots for big damage. And while half my party still goes down, I'm just dealing so much damage it does not really matter. Who is next? Oh, right, Goddess loves to inflict status effects and cast big spells. However, Gogo is set up with an HP boosting helmet and has lures for healing. Just a second too late. She also likes to block physical attacks with other party members, which I certainly do not appreciate. The party certainly isn't a damage-dealing juggernaut, but so right, zombie. Let's try equipping some accessories to block negative status effects, shall we? Going back into the fight with status blocking items equipped, and fight a bit different. This time Edgar uses Drill, and Gogo throws Shurikens to deal big damage without getting blocked. And the fight ends before the countdown even reaches 0. Alright then. 3 gods dead, and it's time to face the final big battle with Kefka. In Magic only, this fight was so easy, I basically glossed over it with casting Ultima repeatedly. This time it's actually going to be way more interesting. And I'm not just saying that to keep up my watch time metrics. This fight is actually a bit tricky when you can't just spam Ultima. Phase 1, and I start by unleashing my best multi-target attacks and Mighty Guard to block. I decide to lead with Sabin and Strago for all target damage, Gogo for support lures, and Edgar for those big Ragnarok hits. This phase isn't too bad. Gogo can keep the party healed up with White Wind, and Grand Delta, Razor Gale, and Ragnarok can take out all the parts. Unfortunately, Sabin goes down in the transition attack between phases and gets replaced with Shadow. Good news is Fuma Shurikens are still really strong, almost as strong as Ragnarok, and at only 500 gil a pop. That's a bargain. The boss deals enough damage in this phase that I decide to focus both Strago and Gogo on healing. It means I can't hit all targets, but it also means I keep my party alive. And the phase shift Gravaga isn't exactly what I want, but that brings us to phase 3. And it starts off really badly, with White Wind healing very little, Strago getting dropped, and Gogo being afflicted with Doom. Phase 3 also has Tornado to reduce the party to red health, and White Wind, which I don't appreciate. Fortunately, it seems to calculate based on a fraction of the boss's max HP rather than the actual max HP. Otherwise, it'd be healing max HP basically every round. And then Strago gets doomed. Okay, gonna need to do some careful planning to make sure to get Strago back up with the right timing. And now, Edgar has been doomed. My entire party gets some statuses and it unleashes Meteor. This isn't ideal, but my magic evasion is pretty good, so I can still use White Wind to keep everyone topped off. And Phase 3 is over, but I lose Strago to Repose, which is really not what I wanted. I definitely wanted both my Loreley users to still be alive. That brings in Celeste, who is good, but not great. And Kefka leads with Heartless Angel, one of his most dangerous attacks because it reduces everyone to 1 HP and functionally negates White Wind until I can heal Gogo back up with an X potion. The rest of Kefka's nonsense is mostly manageable though. Celeste can deal damage, but not a ton, and I really need her to actually support Gogo's healing. Celeste is down, everyone is at 1 HP. Good thing I have that Mega Elixir I picked up earlier, or that may have been the end. Kefka, please stop killing Celeste, I need her to be alive. I do enjoy that Kefka's ultimate attack, Forsaken, is just way less dangerous than Heartless Angel or even his basic attacks. And finally, after throwing who knows how many Fuma Shurikens, a final Shuriken can take out the last of Kefka's health and end the game. And that is it! Final Fantasy VI beaten without using the magic command. I've only played through this game twice before, and with magic only being a complete stomp after the early game, I was really curious how not using the magic command would go, and it mostly went better, honestly. Right until the end, where not being able to cast Ultima, or a regular healing spell, actually meant a lot. But I will have more to say about that in the summary video out in a few weeks. I did want to shout out that I do have a Patreon, linked in the description. I spend a lot of time making these videos, so if you enjoyed the video, want to support the channel, and are financially stable enough to do so, that exists. No pressure though, this channel is free to enjoy for everyone, and will remain that way. For now, if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of this, feel free to subscribe. Hey! Maybe leave a comment if you have something you'd like to say. But whatever you decide to do, have a safe trip home.